Good evening, architect friends, teachers, colleagues, students. At the onset, let me tell you that as a moderator, I have a galaxy of eminent architects and planners. We are about 9 panelists in the session here. And at the onset, I would like to invite Professor Charanjit Singh Shah from Smart Habitat Foundation, who laid the foundation for this. The idea behind the webinar was his, and I would request Dr. Professor Charanjit Singh Shah to kindly give an overview about the webinar and what Smart Habitat Foundation is currently doing.
Sri Akal, Assalamu Alaikum. Now I welcome you to the 10th lecture series by Smart Habitat Foundation. And I just briefly touch upon slides. The Smart Habitat Foundation is about 2 years old baby, and we have about more than 400 expert advisors on the board, and consisting of architects, engineers, artists, and academicians, and a think tank of lover of environment. This is the professional platform, a center of excellence to pursue art, architecture, urban planning, and infrastructure to support education excellence and promote interaction between practice of architecture and education norms. Now, you see, we keep on conducting various seminars and workshops, and also give awards to the students, and also create lifetime achievement awards in the profession. Now we are organizing this with the Association of APJ School of Architecture and Planning, Greater Noida, and Smart Habitat Foundation. This, I would say, the webinar is practically first webinar by us looking upon the transformation in shaping architecture post-coronavirus. We have perhaps to look upon the simplistic, sustainable, smart, green design approach, which is perhaps most complex challenge in creating new dimensions in today's contemporary human architecture. We are in the lockout. These, I think we can go ahead. These are, I will just add on, these are the other webinars which every week we'll be having 15th May, 22nd May, 29th May, 5th June, and 12th June. And these are with collaboration of my friend, Mr. Pankaj Dharkar, the SOM Green, also supported by Ashray, Ishray, and Green Gem from SOCAM. I look upon today's lockout. I think next you can go. This is what the 15th May's speakers from supported by Indian Institute of Architects, Northern Chapter, Punjab Chapter, Haryana Chapter, and we have in this on 15th, we have 2 international architects, Pioz architects from Spain, and we have Farid from ex-architects Dubai. So we have variety of architecture people coming into this and understanding and shaping the architecture of tomorrow. Now I will just, I will just touch upon various elements. We are into the lockouts now nearly for 2 months. No travel, no air, no metro, no surface, no ship, no office, no dining out, no games, no cinemas, no tourism, no marriage, and keeping social distance. Now, it's like we are into the fear syndrome. Life has become minimalistic, and we look upon to be back to nature. And that is what I say in this slide, that when we were static, we were nearer to the nature. And once we are now so fast, we are going away from the nature. So life, we have to move, and we find new dimensions now after
Um, I think there is a, can you bear with us? There seems to be some technical audio problem, but it will be sorted out quickly. Professor Shah, could, could you come again? We are not able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Professor Shah, that's fine. Now, please go ahead.
Yeah, one thing which we have to realize during the lockout, I think perhaps all of us have understood that we are now near to the nature. And second is that probably in Delhi and all around, we are absolutely pollution free. The PM 2.5, PM 10 is even below the normal, and we can see the star, we can see the nice clear sky, and we have the clean rivers now. So these are some of the fundamental things that how to avoid man-made disaster, how to stop raping the Mother Earth, and how to stop global warming and see that we avoid the climate change. Let us look upon through these deliberations the solution and not the mitigation, transformation in shaping the new world of tomorrow, as human are the species solely responsible for the coronavirus as it is on today. So I now, with this welcome note, I welcome you all my eminent speakers who have, are here with us, spending their valuable time. And now I hand over to the mic to my friend, Professor Vivek Sabharwal, to take the deliberation on as a moderator of today's deliberation. Thank you very much, my dear friends who have joined here and are participative in creating a sustainable, transforming architecture of tomorrow, which perhaps is our dream all over. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shah, for that wonderful introduction, and you've set the ball rolling. Let me start by first giving a brief introduction about Professor Shah. So, of course, he needs no introduction to the profession and the industry, but for the benefit of many young students who are joining us, so I'd like to give a brief introduction about him. As you all are aware that Professor Shah is the chairperson of Smart Habitat Foundation, whose role has been to promote art and architecture knowledge among practitioners, academicians, industry and students. He has spearheaded some landmark sustainable projects in India, including Chennai Airport and Times Square Mall in Raipur. Now, led by Professor Shah, Creative Group has also designed the multimodal hubs for Ahmedabad, Gandhinagar Metro, Lucknow Railway, Kota Railway, master plan for city of Jamshedpur, and most recently the iconic terminal building for Kartarpur Corridor project, which was inaugurated by Shri Narendra Modi in November 2019. Besides practicing as an architect, urban planner, and an infrastructure expert, he's also a renowned author, academician, and educationist. Professor Shah has also been recognized by Architecture Plus Design magazine in December 2019, and incidentally, A+D is our media partner for this webinar. And he has facilitated with various awards such as CBR, Lifetime Achievement Award, National Udyog Award, Best Architect of the Year Award, and Jewel of Punjab, among many others. Professor Shah, let me set the ball rolling by asking you the first question. What does transformation mean to you in the context of our webinar topic? And also, do you believe that we will need more smart cities post-COVID times rather than 100 smart cities? Or do you think we need more smart villages considering looking at current migrant situation? Professor Shah, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Vivek. I'll not take much time because we have...
before Professor Shah, you start, let me just tell the participants that as we go along, if you have any questions, please put it in Q&A. So we'll take up the questions once we've asked. What I will do, that I will introduce each panelist and pose a question. And after we've completed one round, I'll take up questions coming from the participants. So please use Q&A to pose your questions as we go along. Thank you. Professor Shah.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek. You know, it's as smart is a very, very fashionable world, you know, and we always look upon smart cities, smart cities, smart cities, and there's always a controversy between creating smart cities and sustainable cities. You know, in the name of smart, our new smart cities are becoming absolutely energy guzzlers, I would say. You know, maybe you talk about Gift City or Dholera City or any other smart cities which are absolutely greenfield cities or brownfield cities. So this perhaps rather, I say Corona is a wake-up call for all of us. We need to be conscious on the global empowerment. We need to see that there can be global intervention, but global empowerment is very dangerous. And what happens that when then global come over and just, you know, sell over their things and give the technology, which is like an energy guzzler, and the buyers and buy our profession. So it is one thing, it is a time to look for the past and the great heritage which India has. We need to see that we had from Indus Valley civilization, we are as old as 3,000 years old. We need to learn from many more things on nature resources, climatical condition, social, religious aspirations, local materials, art and architecture, having belongingness to a place and the people, then creating global glass architecture. Our climatical condition, perhaps high density, low rise, cluster planning, then high rise, high density glass skyscrapers. Passive strategies of green architecture needs to be adopted in a very sensitive manner to create healthy, and I would say create Indian sustainable smart cities. We need smaller cities. We need less of intermodality. We need less of transportation facilities, and we need walkable cities. We need cyclable cities. We need human cities. We need human scale in the cities. That is perhaps, I would say that most of the, now my eminent panelists will debate upon. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Shah. That's you've given us a splendid overview through your question, and now I'll move on to my other panelists. Let me introduce you to our next panelist, Dr. Ramakrishna Rao. Dr. Ramakrishna Rao is an architect with over 40 years of experience in the Sultanate of Oman that he's worked in, United States of America, and of course, India. He's handled a variety of projects ranging from institutional campuses, industrial complex, residential township, and single family villas in the countries such as Oman, India, of course, United States of America, and Dubai and Tanzania. Now, from 1984 onwards, he's been the director, principal architect, and interior designer at Desi Razu Associates, and has worked, also since 2016 as the Dean and Design Chair of Mysore School of Architecture, Mysore. He has been a visiting professor to several colleges. Dr. Rao has presented several technical papers at national and international seminars. Dr. Rao has again won several awards, including Oman Award in 2012 for his project Caledonian College of Engineering Campus for Sultanate of Oman. He also received Best Teachers Award from IIA in 2013, and also has been winner of Mysuru Ultra Tech Awards in 2017 for his project Sankalp Central Park Phase 2 Mysore. He has many achievements to his credit. Dr. Rao, my question to you is, square footage has always been important for a developer. How do you think will social distancing affect the new norm for development? What is your take on this, Dr. Rao?
What I'll do is, offhand, I'll look at it at two different levels. Level one, a lot of participants and panelists may not agree with me, but at level one, we need to look at current real estate situation where a lot of information says that people have got housing stock readily available. Developers all over India were planning to sell in April, which is the festive time all over our country. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, so they're sitting with ready stock. And one of the fears, people have been talking to me, one of the fears is that post-corona, whenever sales occur, end user, the buyers would expect some inputs as far as these items like social distancing, etc., are in place. But considering you can't start demolishing or you can't add square footage to already completed units, so I'm coming up, which is what I said. A lot of my people might disagree, but I'm saying let's use technology to bridge that gap as a temporary measure. We can introduce maybe air curtains, maybe movable screens, which may not give you the physical of social distancing, but will definitely give you barriers, which is what was the whole purpose of social distancing. So let's look at technology and use some to at least fulfill the requirements of current stock. Then level 2 is, let us now look at projects which are on the drawing board, where we can now evaluate number systems which can be put in, maybe using technology. Number 2, we can look at the safety and environment issues, which is what I was also saying. Let's look at sustainable, items like that can be brought in. Now, I like to go back into, tradition. I remember late 50s, early 60s, I used to live in R.K. Puram in New Delhi. And we used to live in a particular type of housing called Rahman type. I mean, today I feel very proud. The whole housing stock is named after an architect. Now, this Rahman type housing is not very big in area, but they're really well designed. Social distancing, not known as a term at all, was there. Ventilation, small front yard, a good backyard, independent access, independent staircase. So some of the lessons can be picked up from. If you also go back into tradition, not just 5 decades, some of our housing, which was there, had a bat hut in the front, had rents. Now these were for social distancing on a different reason, but let's try and pick up some of that. And when we come back to the drawing board, let's put these ideas together. Maybe slightly is a square footage. Now, the minute you do that, the biggest danger is that we may increase the cost. So it is essential that we, as the originators of design, must look at not in terms of what government did for public housing, where they just kept reducing areas. Today, slum clearance boards, housing boards produce 15 square meter house. I'm not like that. I'm saying relook at specifications, relook at services, and see if you can design housing post all this with the idea that this will exist for a few more decades. I feel sad to say that, but that is how the situation is. Vivekji, back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Rao. Let me come to the next panelist, Architect Praveen Patel. Let me give you a brief note about him. Architect Praveen Patel has been practicing as architect and interior designer since 1982, and he has worked on various projects spanning healthcare, residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, religious, hospitality, and recreational facilities. He has been invited as a guest lecturer in various institutes, associations, festivals, seminars, workshops, events, and are widely covered in national publications like Times of India, Sandesh, Divya Bhaskar, Gujarat TV Private Limited, that is GTPL, Nav Gujarat Samay, DNA, Standard Herald, Asia at Ved at Asia at Delhi, etc. Architect Praveen has to his credit various publications through books, magazines, and newspapers. My question to you, Architect Praveen, that we are not new to disaster management in our country. What is the learning from our earlier disasters, which were very different from the current one, and yet can be applied in the present context to help us as architect planners help the society? Over to you. Architect Praveen. You're not audible yet, Architect Praveen. Please unmute yourself.
Now it's okay?
Praveen, please unmute yourself. And did you hear my question? Or do you want me
Yes,
to?
I did. I think he has unmuted me now.
Yes, please go ahead.
Can you hear now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Vivek ji. In reply to this question, I have some notes to read so that I do not miss anything. We have come across various types of disasters. They are mainly earthquake, flood, fire, cyclone, landslides, droughts, sandstorms, heat wave and cold wave, gas tragedy, and body disease like COVID-19. We can divide such subject in 5 different parts. They are education level, individual level, professional level, government level, and general public level. COVID-19 is spreading all over the world. India has Disaster Management Act. Disaster management courses should be part of all the colleges of architecture, planning, and management. For present professionals, online courses can be designed. I can give 2 examples of disasters in Gujarat. First case is earthquake of Gujarat in 2001. It created a big awareness in the state. Government created new GDCR and changed various policies. Gujarat could make faster and better growth after that. Buildings of Gujarat are stronger and better now. Architects, planners, and NGOs also worked very well for the development. Second case is of Surat city. Plague was spread in Surat in 1994. Surat city was dirty before the spread of plague. But now, because of the management and awareness, Surat is one of the cleanest cities of India. Floods at Surat in 2006 and 2015 were also managed very well due to previous experiences. Changes in building use should be allowed for better performance. Architects should design buildings to accommodate various other activities also if required. We have to think of sustainable and green buildings while designing. Keep more focus on HVAC and MEP. Most important aspect to fight any disaster is to follow all the guidelines given by government. Let us hope we come out of COVID-19 disaster at the earliest with good lessons. While looking at various aspects on this subject, I found an interesting quote from Ratanji Tata, who is an architect also. I quote, 2020 बस जीवित रहने का वर्ष है, लाभ और हानि के बारे में चिंता मत करो, सपने और योजनाओं के बारे में भी न करें। इस वर्ष अपने आप को जीवित रखना सबसे महत्वपूर्ण है, जीवित रहना एक लाभ बनाने जैसा है। Unquote. Thank you. Over to you, Vivek. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Praveen ji. I'll go to my next panelist now, Professor Akhtar Chauhan. Professor Akhtar Chauhan has been a visiting professor, architect, planner, educator at Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Architecture, Navi Mumbai. He was principal at Akhtar Chauhan and Associates in Bombay, director at Vikash Ghosh, which is a consulting architects and planners since 1975, founder president of International Association for Humane Habitat, that is IAHH in 1998, was also the chairman of Comprehensive Development Consultancy Services Private Limited, consulting architect since 1982. He'd also been the director at Rizvi College of Architecture since 2001 to 2018. And prior to that, he was the principal at the same college from 1992 to 2001. He's also held position as the president for Maharashtra Association of Schools and Architecture, has been the vice president at World Society of Architects 2000 to 2002, chairman at Ad Hoc Board of Studies in Architecture, University of Bombay, member of Board of Studies in Architecture, University of Pune. He has held several positions in different capacity. Professor Akhtar Chauhan, my question to you is, how change in human and social behavior reflects in creation of humane architecture? Professor Akhtar. Professor Akhtar, please come. Professor Akhtar, kindly unmute yourself so that we can hear you. Professor Akhtar,
I think he is not here. If you can go ahead, please.
Okay, I think he's had some bandwidth problems. So as and when he joins us, we will carry his question forward. I would now request Architect Balbir Verma as the next panelist, and I'll take his question. Before I take his question, let me introduce you to Architect Balbir Verma. He's the former president of Indian Institute of Architects, graduate of Chandigarh College of Architecture, CCA from 1969 batch. During his professional career of more than 40 years, he has to his credit a number of residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional projects in Delhi, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh. Also through his participation at various international forums all over the world, he has gained enormous experience in the field of architecture and urban design and planning. In addition to having served as a member of UIA Council, Zonal Chairman Arcasia, Chairman of Committee of Professional Practice of both Arcasia and CAA, which is the Commonwealth Association of Architects. He's been a member board of Governor, SPA New Delhi, SPA Vijayawada. Presently, he is also Chairman Advisory Committee of National Information Center of Earthquake Engineering. My question to you, Architect Balbir Verma, is that extraordinary times need extraordinary measures. What role do you think the professional bodies and architects as individuals need to take at such times? Over to you, Architect Balbir Verma.
Can I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Vivek, for asking me a very pertinent question about the role of professional bodies and the architects in their individual capacity. It's just few hours back that I had someone shared something on WhatsApp, which was the description of the pandemic which we had about 100 years back, and this was none other than poet Nirala, who had explained the tragic instances during the Spanish flu, which was about 100 years back, and also the pathetic or negligible health facilities which the country had at that time. Right now, at this stage, we are having better facilities, but definitely not to cope with the present situation, that is COVID-19. Why I say this? Basically, since we are talking about the role of the architectural institutes or the architects, I am not going to go into what designs are we going to make, or what there are number of expert panelists who have already, some of them have spoken about it and they will be talking about it. What I am going to take is from here that basically what the professional institutes need to do, as has been asked by you. Right now, there are issues which are related to the building industry and the construction. It is also the construction sites which is definitely relevant to the profession of architecture. At this time, as far as I can suggest, or if I am permitted to say, recommend, that the institution right now at this point needs to earnestly take up its role for institutionalizing the profession's usefulness to the society with the emergent actions and the actions which will be taken as post-COVID. So, having said that, I would suggest that the institutes at regional level and also at national level should facilitate compiling of the information on the recommendations or the initiative which have already been taken or in process of being taken for dealing with this situation of COVID in terms of various building activities or the building design in the future times to come. According to me, this information, if compiled by the institute, will be a useful resource for a collective and coordinated approach for doing the presently required repurposing, or some of them call it transformation of the existing buildings of other use to make it purposeful for using it as health services. And then for future, how to proceed further for designing all public buildings. I repeat, all public buildings in future to be designed so that the repurposing of those buildings is kept in mind for taking care of the tragedies or pandemics like this. Like, as far as today's times are concerned, this also reminds us that all architects have a leadership role. It reminds us of our leadership role in the building industry, and it is the job of the architect necessarily to guide the building industry for various aspects, especially in this time. What I am trying to propose is that for all architects, whether they are dealing with the designs for a bigger project or a small project. The day-to-day hygiene at the site must be given. Not only proper care, should be properly implemented, and also wherever required, I am not saying everywhere it is required, wherever required, the provision of temporary housing or temporary shelter for the workers, which should not be the horrible tin boxes or the polythene tents which we generally see at our construction sites. Having said that, I would just say, yes, there is need to develop region-wise. I'm not saying for all over India it will be one design, region-wise designs which are suitable for mobile temporary shelter accommodation to be used at various sites. And who else other than the architects are going to design this? We need to coordinate and design these temporary shelters, which will be used not only the emergent situation which we have, but henceforth it should be available as a mandatory requirement for all sites. And let us not wait and see that why this will be done only for in the time when there is this pandemic situation. It should be irrespective of the fact for future, all times to come, that this requirement should be adhered to, so that we don't face any shutdown situations for construction sites, which has been happening even, which is happening because of this present pandemic. I thought these are the two important aspects which in these 4 or 5 minutes which I can bring forward, but this is a matter which needs to be detailed out at the institutional level and the level of the architects at their individual level. Thank you, Vivek.
Yeah, thank you, Balbir ji. In this galaxy of architects and planners that we have in our panel, we also have a very eminent MEP consultant. So he's not an architect, but he will add value to this webinar, and we have very pertinent question to him. Let me introduce Mr. Pankaj Dharkar, who's the founder, president, and a renowned MEP and a green building consulting firm by the name PDA Pankaj Dharkar and Associates, which provides innovative and sustainable design solutions in the field of building engineering services, including HVAC, fire and life, safety, electrical, lighting, ELV, plumbing, BMS, security, vertical transportation, renewable, and green building certification. During his rich experience of 40 years, he has successfully designed and coordinated more than 4,000 projects of various applications, such as healthcare, pharmaceuticals, educational institutes, hotels, restaurants, offices, shopping malls, software and biotech parks, data centers, residential towers, banks, auditoriums, supermarket, you name it, he's done them all. He's the founder member of the Indian chapter of CTBUH, Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat. He's also a member of several other technical societies. Mr. Dharkar has been the past president of ASHRAE Western India chapter and past national president of ASHRAE. Currently, he is also the international president of FSAI, Fire and Security Association of India. He is present the national chairman of the GEM Council for the new Green Building Certification Program by ASSOCHAM. We welcome Mr. Dharkar. My question to you is that as a MEP consultant, how, according to you, can MEP be integrated with architecture post-COVID times? From practicing green or net zero architecture, which we've been doing so far, now we need to add another dimension, which is infection-free zones. What is your take on this? Please.
Thank you, Vivek ji. I think that was a long introduction, but thanks for that introducing me. Of course, my thanks goes to Charanjit Singh ji for making me part of this panel discussion, which is full of eminent architects. I am an odd man here. Also, thanks to APG School of Architecture and Planning for finding me a fit person to be here. So, friends, I think the COVID-19 outbreak is likely to bring about some permanent changes in lifestyle of people that may help preparing for the future. Buildings will play a very important role. They have been, but such epidemics, since people have to stay indoor most of the time, prevention and control are the key elements when facing such a major public health crisis. So our building will have to be designed and absolutely planned accordingly. Of course, the building services from the field I come will play even more important role, not only in terms of overall standards to be achieved, but also in terms of various other aspects of facade engineering, vertical transportation, location, various aspects of service routing, horizontal drainage, energy sources, sustainability, and so on and so forth. So I think the way we as MEP fraternity was dealing, integrating or doing the projects with architecture will, I believe, will be more intense, and sustainability and energy demand, and because the health and well-being of occupant is an important area which gets added post COVID as a very prime focus. Currently, all in certification program, if you take green certification program, are evolving across 5 key concepts: energy efficiency, resource efficiency, water conservation, indoor environment quality, site and community impact. So I think new concept in building technology will have to be implemented post COVID outbreak so that the building is more safe, comfortable, healthy, livable, and manageable. So we have learned a lesson that our future building will not only be fire safe, but also infection safe. The ventilation, which is very crucial to dilute the contaminants, will have to be brought in excess. That's what our ASHRAE research and ISHRAE research is showing. So, and its monitoring and indoor air quality will become very essential part. Our building will have to have enhanced measures for controlling the collision of air and pollutants, controlling the exhaust backflow of kitchens and bathroom, setting up effective water seals so that to reduce the risk of virus transmission through drainage pipes and stools, controlling the concentration of indoor particulate matter will gain importance. We all know the increased humidity makes a building unpleasant for occupants and also helps in growth of bacteria, while lower humidity can also cause viruses like COVID-19. Of course, a lot of debates and discussions are happening, but what ASHRAE and ISHRAE believes that a relative humidity between 40 to 60% will prevent the growth of microbes within the building. So a lot of work needs to be done in this area in terms of when HVAC man designs and works with architecture. Of course, ASHRAE globally has put up a very big task force, one epidemic task force we call them, which is working continuously every day. We have, in fact, yesterday till 2 a.m. we were having a meeting with all international consultants across the globe, and we are sharing our experiences. While I'm very glad that our Indian Society of Heating Refitting Engineers has already come up with a special COVID-19 task force guide, which is an excellent book which is now being referred across the country by various government departments and everybody referring it. I would always urge all of you who have not gone through, please download this. So in addition to describing the virus and its transmission route, it also looks at the effect of environmental condition, particularly relative humidity and temperature in residential, commercial, and industrial applications. Friends, the proper cleaning and disinfection techniques, proper hand washing facilities, signages, and its engineering integration will have to be thought by interior designers and architects in much detailed way. Work from home concept, creating flexible working hours, social distancing, spacious breakout areas, innovative solutions for touch-free operations of doors, windows, drawers, and other equipments to prevent spreading of viruses are also going to be key elements where architects and MEP consultants will have to work together. The requirements of building must include the thermal scanning, quick access to medical facilities, vehicle management, relevant signage to alert people, flexibility in changing of room function when necessary, like creating a medical room or residential room, isolation and observation room, supply storage rooms, etc., will mean that a lot of thought has to be given by MEP engineers and also the architects in the planning stage, which probably we were not doing so intensely. The buildings in future will have to be more stringent in maintaining water quality, air quality, fitness facilities, cleanliness facilities, and also use of antibacterial building materials in order to reduce the risk of people getting infected and also enhance their immunity. So COVID outbreak highlights the importance of proper hygiene, as also shared by earlier speakers, and emphasize how easily disease can spread in the modern world. The building can either help to prevent spread of infectious disease or can facilitate its spread of proliferations. So building certification program, which I am chairing, the GEM, recognizes importance of certain aspects of building design that plays important role in making building healthy, safe and secure. So I think what Vivekji you asked, I think I tried to cover it quickly. I will take further questions if required. But once again, my thanks to Charanjit Singh ji for having me here and share my views. I'm sure I am an old man. Again, I repeat, I am not an architect as others are, but maybe if relevant question, I would like to take them forward as the time comes. Thank you, Vivekji.
Yes, I am. The questions are already pouring in. So once we complete a round, I'll take the questions. And thank you so much, Mr. Pankaj. Let me introduce my next panelist, architect Sabina Khanna. We welcome you, Sabina ji. Architect Sabina is the founding principal of Studio KIA, New Delhi. She graduated from Chandigarh College of Architecture, and she started her professional career under the guidance of Professor R.N. Dogra, a close associate of Le Corbusier, and later established Studio KIA, a globally recognized and multi-awarded architecture firm with offices in Gurgaon and UAE and a presence in Goa. In its nearly 4 decades of existence, Studio KIA's project profile transcends scale and use from master planning and urban design to high-rise luxury, residential development, hospitality and retail environment, educational and institutional campus. He is presently a fellow of the Indian Institute of Architects and associate of Institute of Interior Designers, a founding member of Women's Entrepreneur Committee at PhD, Chamber of Commerce, influencer for Women Innovator 2019, a virtual incubator for women entrepreneur, and curator for IDAC Intelligence Series 2019, New Delhi, and IDAC Expo 2020 at Bombay. She's been a recipient of several awards, and her practice and philosophy on architecture covered extensively in various publications. Ma'am, my question to you is, if pandemics last longer than a year, do you think there will be an impact on commercial real estate as well as office planning? And what about adaptive reuse? Do you think work from home will become the new trend? Sabina ma'am, please.
Post our marriage. So that is how it goes. The question that you have put forth actually covers a large span of where you've touched upon commercial real estate, office planning, adaptive reuse, and work from home. you know. So all of these are actually interlinked. So let me begin with what most of the other panelists have said earlier. Of course, we all know that COVID-19 is more of a humanitarian challenge that come up in front of us today. You know, unlike the other catastrophes which have always left some physical impacts on the world, this one is an invisible enemy that we are fighting. So it is more of a humanitarian challenge that we have to rise up to and be able to look up to. And as architects, where we have a lot to contribute, because the COVID-19 pandemic, which is having a growing impact on spaces, on how people are going to tomorrow use those spaces. And the spaces have to be inhabited by people. And that is where our role as architects comes into being, of how we can actually make those spaces safer, healthier, happier, where people can work, eat, live, you know, and interact. And what is going to change from here on is the mindset of how people actually use those spaces. And to quite an extent, where real estate comes into being, where people are directly involved, is also how people are going to invest from tomorrow. You know, people today have learned how to live in limited means. They are only investing on the bare essentials, and they've realized that they can survive and survive well. Technology has risen to the level they are all becoming tech savvy. It has taken some time for us to come to terms and use technology to our advantage, to be able to work and get connected to the world. So when we talk about commercial real estate, well, real estate commercial, if I can just elaborate more, would also can include more of the hospitality industry, the retail segment, commercial office spaces, industry, travel, entertainment. All of it is going to be impacted largely, because people are henceforth going to be cautious of how safe are we when we actually start using these spaces, you know. So there is going to be a major correction in terms of planning that would need to be done, in terms of usage of these spaces, of how regularly and how often would these spaces be used as they had been used earlier. You know, there is going to be a new normal. There's going to be a new world order of how all of these spaces will now be used. So when I say, I mean, travel, maybe we would now think twice before we just hop onto a flight for pleasure or even for work. You know, maybe we might just think, for work, if it is, we could just get onto a Zoom call or, you know, onto a video conferencing call and just do the need bit. And we don't have to be zipping across the world for any business meetings, you know. So travel is going to be impacted. So the moment we say travel, then there comes related is the hospitality in industry, where hotels are going to be impacted. Hotel usage is going to get reduced. We already have new protocols will have to come into being, and which are already happening across these various segments, you know, in the larger commercial real estate zone, where protocols are being put into place for usage from here on. As a use case scenario, lots of hotel chains have already started converting part of the hotel rooms into office usage spaces, so that when people are visiting those hotels, they are actually using those spaces for hotels and meetings out of those spaces itself. So if you have an 80-room hotel, probably the 40 rooms are already being converted into office uses, office cabins, private spaces, meeting rooms. So a new adaptive reuse for the hotels is already underway. It's already happening. It's already been launched as a trial test run. And this adaptive reuse will also happen across other building typologies, you know. When we come to retail segment, maybe I'm not as comfortable again just rushing into malls. Like, you know, one would want to avoid crowds. So online retail, online buying and selling is happening. So people have taken to that, which would mean a larger use case scenario of maybe warehouses and storages as against malls. So one would have to think of what would happen to the mall spaces, you know. How can those be adaptive to a further reuse? How can those environments be made more agile for tomorrow, you know, where you have all those buildings standing? So then you come to probably even the entertainment industry. You know, what about the large amusement parks and those leisure centers that you have? People are not going to probably frequent them as often, you know. They may just think twice before visiting these spaces. So our commercial real estate across the board is going to come under a major correction, because the mindset of people is going to be different from here on, you know. And so we say that the commercial real estate will have to actually go merely, go beyond merely than just adapting to the coronavirus, you know. They'll have to think of more modifications to make those environments more agile. And that is what is going to be very important, because in these few weeks that we've seen, our lives have literally changed, you know, because of this unprecedented pandemic that we have all, that we are all facing. So the way we socialize, the way we meet, the way we live, workplace, it's all a changed norm from now. Likewise, office planning, you know, when people start frequenting offices from tomorrow, when you start going to offices, one would pretty much want, touch-free access from your car up till your cabin where you walk in, you know. So which would mean you would have sensor-driven, a voice-controlled, voice-censored entrance doors to your elevators. You're not pressing knobs to climb, you know, to get into the elevator, right? Opening up into your office, larger spaces to your cabin. So you haven't touched anything, you know. You have to have those as touchless access through and through, you know. Maybe circulation within offices is going to become very important. That would have to be kind of re-looked at. Maybe you're trying to do a one-way circulation movement so that you're not really crossing and not coming in contact with people. As Dr. Rao mentioned, the square footage in offices spaces, which was a norm of 60 to 80 square feet per person, they just have to change to about 120 and above, because people would want that kind of social distancing. In this case, more of a physical distancing is what would be required, you know. The trend of open offices that we had lately will undergo changes, because people would want to be in independent cubicles, which is their private space where interaction, you know, may become less. And then in this case scenario for us, HVAC and air quality of that particular space, which is inhabited by different people, becomes very important. And that's where Mr. Dharkar's load comes into play when he said that he is the odd one out. But I think this is a time for us architects to actually collaborate with all consultants across all disciplines, collaborate with industry, where they come up with the kind of materials, the antimicrobial, antibacterial, maybe an antiviral materials that we need to rethink into, to be able to use in our projects, you know. So we are, as architects, we are at a point of time where we will have a very important role to play from here on. And also what goes on with work from home. Yes, that is a scenario that has come into being now. We have gradually accepted the fact of how we can effectively and productively work from home. Initial glitches overcome. Everybody is now taken to this new norm of working from home. And lots of corporate houses are actually accepting this as a norm and are even looking into a longer work from home scenario, and they may not have their entire teams coming back post lockdown as well, because effectively it is leading to reduced traffic on roads. It is working out better for the corporate houses because people are not commuting. We have lesser noise pollution, lesser air pollution. We have a reduced carbon footprint on the roads. It's actually doing us all good, you know, and then we have these isolated areas from where the teams are working. So maybe tomorrow corporate houses could even look at distributed office spaces. You know, they may just work out where the larger chunk team comes from. Let's say for an office in Gurgaon, you would have teams coming from Delhi, from Sonipat, from Ghaziabad, from Noida. So they could actually figure out where the teams are coming from, and they could actually do distributed office spaces so that you're not really wasting time and money and effort in just commuting and all being together. We may just even have to look at, work options within our already existing residential communities and colonies, where probably alongside clubs, some kind of smaller shared working spaces, but shared yet with the maintained distance, could be created so that people can be working there, because not everybody has the privilege of working from home, you know. And
thank you, Savina ma'am. I think you've shared, many aspects which we need to deliberate upon. And I think since questions are also pouring in, some which are related to what you're saying, we'll take it up and you could respond later.
sure, thank you.
Panelists now, Architect Puneet Sethi. Architect Puneet Sethi, graduate from School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. He graduated in 1989 and has been in active architecture practice since 1990. He's a principal architect at his consultancy firm IAD Studio in Gurgaon. He's been actively associated with the Indian Institute of Architects. He is currently the chairman of IIA Haryana chapter. He has served as editor of newsletter of IIA Northern Chapter Vastu Samvad, which we all are familiar with, and has been the editor of IIA's national newsletter. And he's also the chairman of SPA Alumni New Delhi and has served as member of General Council of SPA New Delhi. He's been associated with teaching of architecture as a visiting faculty at many institutes. Welcome, Architect Puneet. My question to you is that architects have always been known to respond to human behavior. What, according to you, will change now?
Thank you, Vivek, and for giving me this opportunity to talk. It's a pretty interesting question, and I would say pretty intriguing one also. In the last 2-3 weeks that we've been struggling with this lockdown, this thought has been crossing my mind that, how is human behavior going to change? But let me first also add that I'm going to look at this entire scenario from a very optimistic level. I'm not very pessimistic about what is going on. And I'm pretty optimistic that the world will return back to normalcy sooner or later. How much time it will take, we do not know. What is human behavior? I mean, if you talk in the architectural parlance, what is human behavior? I think human behavior is about the human needs, the human aspirations, or the way people use built spaces. As far as architects are concerned, we always take cue from this behavior and respond through the spatial planning that we do. And in return, we also end up influencing the behavior through design. We are all familiar with that, saying that we shape our buildings and thereafter buildings shape us. So architecture brings about creation of a built environment for human activities, and human activities are intrinsically related to human behavior. Now, this is the premise I think I would like to build upon, once I've heard your question. Sorry. We are also aware that, every major natural phenomena can cause changes in human behavior. I am hopeful that pandemics don't happen very often. They've been happening once in 100 years. So let us hope nothing else is going to happen in the next 100 years. The technology, the healthcare systems have advanced to a very great level. And I'm sure, the next pandemic may never happen. But the way nature has brought mankind to its knees to instill a bit of sense is, I think, the factor. I am sure this will impact the way people live their lives and conduct their activities, which effectively means that people are likely to become more sensible hereon. And the biggest change that I perceive that will happen with people is that people will now want to connect back to nature. There will be a conscious shift towards sustainability, not for securing a green rating for a building, but for securing a secure future. This fear that has come into our lives will instill a sensible approach to life. This is what my belief is. Now, how will design measures reflect is what I think we all need to understand. I think design will immediately become focused towards addressing climate change and environmental conservation, something that we have all been talking about for the last 50 years, but seldom has it been put into practice. And that is why we've seen what has been going on in the entire world in terms of climate change. One of the major fallouts that I perceive the way travel has been stopped, the way world trade may come under restrictions, one of the major challenges that I see is there is going to be a lack of availability of materials coming from all over the globe, which effectively means that people will now begin to accept the use of local products. Now, which I think is a very big positive outcome, which is likely to happen, because this is going to bring back the context into architecture. We keep on complaining about buildings of various kinds without context, and without context. I think use of local materials is now going to bring back the context into architecture, which effectively means we are going to look, and please, everything that I'm saying is all about human behavior, their aspirations and needs. Cost effective, energy efficient, and sustainable. This is going to be the most obvious outcome of this whole phenomena. Let us also understand that, just like terrorism and substance abuse, they brought in changes in terms of very stringent security checks when we enter buildings, etc. I think the aftermath of this pandemic will bring in a requirement of scanning and sanitization of all visitors, all workers, and all goods that get into a building. So which means that spatial planning will, certain norms will change, wherein we will have to take into account how people enter and exit a building. So that is going to be one major behavioral change which will have to be incorporated into architecture. Also, I think this will bring about a lot of automated operations coming into buildings, which may be sensor based, or they may be based on robots, high hygiene installations, disinfection of air, and extremely low maintenance or zero maintenance finishes. So these are going to be things that architects will have to be looking at. I think this is the time when architect as a team leader must emerge again. This phenomena had been lost over the last 2 decades. I think the architects will have to emerge as team leaders, because all these aspects will have to be governed and taken up by architects themselves. All these design elements will be directly related to human behavior and the way people use spaces, as well as the way the people interact with one another. So passive strategy is another area which will come back in a big way, because not for any other means of sustainability, but for promoting mental health. You see, there's going to be a lot of mental issues coming with this post-pandemic era because of various economic factors, etc. And passive strategies by bringing in natural light and ventilation and creating the indoor-outdoor linkages is going to be an extremely important architectural input that will be required for promoting mental health. And I'm also looking at de-densification of our urban settlements. The way people live, the proximity will have to change. We will have to design buildings which will give people enough privacy and that physical distancing, but yet keep them connected to the society so that the feeling of community, etc., continues to happen. And there is likely to be a quantum jump in data-driven decision-making operations, both for buildings and their services, security and surveillance, as well as, I think, monitoring human health. So that is going to be a very important aspect. Some areas of anthropometry and spatial standards may change. Yes, there is a likelihood for activities which require a lot of people to be together. Some spatial changes and norms might change. I think profession of architecture will have to now take the lead role once again and lead the way, because it's only by spatial planning and design can we create a healthy environment for our people. We've all known that. The rest of the professions will have to follow
that. Let me interrupt, Architect Puneet. Thank you so much for your deliberations.
Thank you, Vivek.
We have 2 more speakers to go. So
sure.
I want to Architect Mukul Goel. Architect Mukul Goel, who's next in our panel, he's the graduate from Government College of Architecture, Lucknow from 1994. And he worked with the landscape architectural firm. And in 1995, he joined Architecture Department, MNIT Jaipur, as an associate professor, where he taught for 8 years. And then onwards from, he started his own practice in 2003. And in 2017, he was invited to give a lecture at Cambridge University. And again, he's widely traveled and has been an active member of Institute of Architects. And he's also has many publications to his credit. Architect Mukul, there's a very pertinent question to you. one talks about collateral damage that the pandemic has done to our professional practice. But what are the collateral benefits which our profession has gained in these trying times? Please give your response very briefly, because I believe Professor Akhtar Chauhan has joined us. We will go after you, and then we'll take up a few questions. So over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll just take 3 to 4 minutes. And this is a very interesting thing, because a lot of people have been discussing about what wrong has happened. We all know what wrong has happened. But now what are the changes which are really going to come about? And I'm a hardcore professional, and I'm speaking to a very big audience out here. We have almost 250 people out there listening to us. And majorly all of them, most of them are professionals and practitioners in the field. I like to tell you that as an architect, you have 4 points of contact. First point of contact is your office. The second point of contact is your client. The third point of contact is your site. And the fourth point of contact are your suppliers and vendors. Now, the way traditionally we were interacting on all these 4 nodal points is definitely going to change. I mean, I'm in my 3rd decade of my practice, and I have undergone several quantum changes in the way I practiced in the previous years. And I believe this particular pandemic has initiated another quantum jump to the way we're going to practice in future. Already all of you know that we are in lockdown and we still have to run our offices. So before the month of March, I did not know how to operate a video conferencing platform. Let alone, I mean, I used to hate the telephone also. I used to say, if you want to talk to me, just come and sit in front of me and let's just discuss and get over with it. Now these things are going to change. I mean, already we couldn't stop our work. So my office is running on Google Meets for the last 1.5 months. I mean, I sent everybody home at, 1 week before the lockdown. So we have been working from home since then. And we have tried to adapt and make ourselves comfortable. So this is one thing. And as as a leader of the office, you have to ensure that the mental health and the mental spirit is high. The morale is high of your staff. So this is another thing that we are learning. I mean, these are just learnings which are coming in front of it. Technology now has become a very, very big tool, and we are connecting with so many people over these video conferencing platforms, and of course, WhatsApp and emails, which we were doing earlier. Clients, again, of course, we were talking to them over the phone. But definitely I'm not talking about larger cities. I'm not talking about Delhi and Bombay. I'm talking about cities like Jaipur and Lucknow, where the client would give you a call and say, "Aajo, chai peene baithte hain." Well, let's just have a cup of tea. I mean, that used to be the way of chatting. Okay, come over to my place, or I'll come over to your place. Now, these things are now not going to happen. This is not going to be very, very frequent. This is going to change. Now, you yourself are going to say, or he out of fear himself is going to say, okay, let's just quickly have a Zoom call or a quick WhatsApp call over the phone. Another thing, I mean, now this is specifically to professionals, that the financial transaction with clients was generally cash, check. I mean, I had a big problem with some of my clients who said, "Sorry, sir, we cannot pay you in these months because my checkbook is in my office and I can't go to the bank. I mean, the bank is not really accessible." So now these things we'll have to put in our contracts that, "Sir, please, the only way we're going to exchange money is through electronic. I want a NFT transfer." Of course, some places might not be so practical, but yes, clients will accept it now. I mean, initially they may have some reservations, but now those reservations won't be there. Contractors, I've been talking to all of my contractors, just trying to find out how they're placed. Now the thing with them is that some of the contractors are in a mess because all of their labor has scattered off, because what they used to do was they had this daily basis system that they used to pay the labor on a daily basis. But some of my contractors have been very organized. They had permanent staff. So they had permanent labor. They were paying 15,000 to 20,000 to their labor per month, and they were providing space to live and food. So those sites are very safe, and they are still in terms of operations, they are ready to start any moment. So now there's going to be a shift because Bihari labor has gone to Bihar, Rajasthani labor has gone to Rajasthan. So now if a Rajasthani contractor wants Bihari labor for plaster, so he will actually have to employ them. He cannot say, okay, tum daily basis pe aa jao. No, he'll have to employ them. He's going to say, okay, 6 months contract or 12 months contract, I will pay you monthly this much. Please come and stay at my place. Now, this is going to be a big change in the whole unorganized construction sector. I'm not talking about Shahpur Palanji. I'm not talking about L&T. I'm just talking about the local contractors that most of us are working with. And of course, fourth, suppliers. Already the trend had started when WhatsApp came about, that a lot of clients would walk into the showroom and switch on the WhatsApp video and show probably the tile showroom. You used to show, okay, I'm liking this tile, and you sitting in your office, you could quickly tell your client, okay, this is good, this is not good. But now this is going to be more widespread, more prevalent. Now, not just WhatsApp, these video calls, each and every supplier is going to install cameras in his showrooms and movable portable cameras so that he can discuss with the architect and client sitting at different locations, probably different cities. I mean, I want to see a particular tile in a showroom in Bangalore sitting in Jaipur or Delhi. I can do that now. This has now become a reality because now I'm trained. I've actually been trained in this last 1 month in using these video conferencing.
Let me interrupt you, Architect Mukul. Thank you so much.
I'm over. That was the last point.
Thank you. Let me interrupt you here, Architect Mukul. We need to go to the next panelist. The last panelist, Professor Akhtar Chauhan, though you were not supposed to be the last panelist, but since there were some issues, technical issues, so you could not come in earlier. Sir, I've already read your resume, so I will not go through that again. I'll come to the question. People know you. My question to you is how change in human and social behavior will reflect in creation of humane architecture? Can you tell us briefly so that we can open to questions after this? Sir, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for inviting on this distinguished panel. My main concern is about the human aspects related to our profession of architecture. This pandemic has shaken us all, and we need to rethink our ways and means of practicing architecture and ensuring certain qualitative changes. I think let me begin first of all, at the national level, we will have to initiate a thorough review of our priorities in terms of the kind of homes that are required, the kind of cities that we need to build, the kind of neighborhoods and the communities that we need to create. So this rethinking has to begin right from national level to the state level to the local level. We need to review our standards. The way we have been managing, we cannot continue because we have seen the result of unsustainable development. We have damaged the environment in a big way, and now this is the time to reflect and bring about the changes. Architects have been in the forefront to suggest a change towards a more sustainable and more humane kind of environment to live in. We have at every level representatives of architects at the city level, at the district level, at the state level, at the central level, who need to be consulted to bring about these policy changes, which will ensure that these changes will be incorporated in the rules and regulation of the guidelines for construction and development of our homes and habitats. So this has been my major concern for last so many decades, and we have been very active at Indian Institute of Architects and Council of Architecture and several other institutions to bring about this change. But somehow the authorities have not paid much attention to the suggestions made at various forums. But now it cannot be ignored. We need to reflect on this and work out action programs so that finally our citizens get more affordable homes, more sustainable homes, and more livable communities. So can we begin to look at these changes and the priorities that we need to establish? So this is what I would like to stress in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think, let me tell you, we are flooded with questions. And what I'm going to do is take a few questions. I'll also ask the panelists that there have been a lot of questions that are coming. Some are very specific to the panel members, some are general questions. And I will pick up few questions and I will request the panelists that as you can see the questions, you may respond and type your answers directly so the questions can be answered. But so all the questions are there with you. You can view those questions. Let me just pick few questions that I will go through. One of the questions that has come by an anonymous attendee, that why is the smart city a much needed affair post-COVID pandemic? And how will the downfall in economic going to affect the initiation of such smart city? And could you list few smart city features in which India lags behind when compared to that of the world? Would any of the panelists would like to take this question?
No, I can spontaneously answer this. Can you hear me, Vivek?
Yes, please go ahead, sir.
You know, it's, the question today, I mostly agree with Professor Akhtar Chauhan and Puneet Sethi in respect of that it's nothing of smart in nature, but we have to really redefine our planning, our practically the passive strategies of planning where we respect the nature and try to live within the nature and make resource management in a manner that it's absolutely sustainable. Not that, and perhaps I would also request my friend, MEP consultant, my Pankaj Dharkarji, that in case we are able to use that technology, which perhaps can be sustainable and environment friendly, where we consume less of equipment and other things just for the sellability and not for the workability. So today is a time where we need introspection in terms of our physical planning. And in case, like my friend Akhtarji has said, that we need to see in terms of how we really plan out. We have to really take over the seat as a leader. And I do not say that we command the leadership. Yes, we need to command, but not demand. And command will come with some sort of very knowledgeable change, which is apparently visible. Yes, here is what I look, which is absolutely natural and sustainable. The other aspect we were talking about the, maybe it is this conference is not for the office management, how do you manage the office, but this webinar is particularly for how do you plan space management in terms of architecture. So we have to see with the changed corona, what will be the space management in terms of office spaces, in terms of residential spaces, in terms of, wherein otherwise it was like making capacity building. Now it is you have to miniature and minimize the spaces, and how optimizing the spaces is what is architecture of tomorrow. Thank you, Vivek.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. There are many more questions that are pouring in. So let me just take another one, which is coming. And well, this is one question that I would definitely ask. What would be the, well, this question that has been asked, that how green buildings will help in post-COVID times. So would anyone would like to take up this question?
I could respond to that.
Yes, please.
See, the very definition of a green building is about resource management, energy conservation, sustainability, and living with nature. That is what a green building is all about. That is what sustainability is all about. It's just that in the last few decades, this entire globalization has shifted our thought process into a world which is away from the context from where we operate. My take in what I said earlier also was that this entire episode of COVID-19 has brought us back, brought us into a situation where we now appreciate the power of nature. And we know that nature is the supreme. And green buildings definitely were built earlier. All civilizations, their vernacular architecture is green. There is nothing red about any vernacular architecture. And that same technology has to come back. We have to start looking at our context. We have to start building locally. We might think globally, which is all right, but we still have to build locally. We have to design for the local situation.
Sir, I just want to add there that passive architecture, which has been our heritage, coupled with modern technologies, would be the future. I think both has to work hand in hand to ensure that we create more net zero buildings, net positive buildings, and also create a safe and secured and infection-free premises will be the future, sir.
Yeah, so there's another question which has come from Anjali. Will this bring a change in the building bylaws? What way? The materials, spaces, redefine, how? When we talk about transformation, so will it bring change in the building bylaws?
Vivekji, I just had one, okay. I would just like to finish one line of the earlier question. See, one of the key things will be that more and more are going to be working from home, sitting at homes. So this green sustainable architecture will become a very key issue there. That is the question there. Would you like me to answer on this bylaws?
Yes,
or is it to
please.
specific somebody? Okay.
I would like to add something to the bylaw question.
I will just
give
my couple of points. Then you can add. So one of the things of which architect Sabina spoke of this adaptive reuse. Now nowhere in our regulations and bylaws do we have anything to fit those in. You know, in a small note that I had written, if you look at stadiums which are converted for temporary usage, there are no provisions there because none of the regulations require beyond a certain number of toilets or etc. So that is the issue. For adaptive reuse, we must bring in new bylaws. Over to you, Puneet.
Yeah, see the point when we talk about building bylaws, you see in the last few decades what we've seen is that most municipalities have moved towards densification. So our bylaws are geared for putting in more people on a given plot of land. The densities have been, whether you look at the way TOD norms have come in, the way you have norms, everything that you do, the measure that you take for greening, so everything is geared for building more and more. And now we have, I think, realized that this is more and more. So I think our building bylaws, number one, will have to, over a period of time, go back a little, think as to where we went wrong. However, you know, things like our building conservation, energy conservation codes, and anything that has to do with bringing in sustainability into building will be enforced with more vitality. I think I am looking at more enforcement coming in terms of energy conservation, and to a certain extent, our planners will have to look at density and densification of cities from a different perspective.
I have another question from architect Manoj Jain. Because of high land costs in metro cities, where we have been trying hard to make the spaces compact to make them economical, also making changes in existing buildings required for the social distancing will cost implications. Do we think that the people will start making these changes in the near future, or they will wait for the vaccine or treatment to come? Would you like to take this?
Can I?
Please go ahead.
Well, can I say something on this?
Yes, please go
Vivek,
ahead.
Vivek, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think the question is in response to what Rao mentioned about the existing buildings. And it is not necessary that whenever you think of changing the building, as far as the interior of those buildings is concerned, is going to cost that much if it concerns the health and the living of the people in those buildings. And I would also take this opportunity to say what was mentioned about the adaptive use of the buildings to another use. So when I was mentioning about repurposing the use of building, I definitely specifically mentioned that I am talking about the public buildings, so that there can be a mandatory requirement that, like what Rao was also trying to say, if you are building a stadium, if you are building a large institutional building, which is a school or a college, there certain provisions can be made that in case of emergencies like this, they can be converted into those kind of buildings which can be used for health facilities. So these kind situations have also a reason. During the natural disaster in 2001, which was the earthquake in Gujarat, you know, we suddenly felt that the buildings which were public buildings, even the hospitals, etc., also collapsed. That is why there were certain stringent norms which were made that when you make the public building, there will be specific earthquake codes. Similarly, there is definitely a possibility of making some not only recommendation, but certain mandatory requirement that whatever public building, whether it is a private public, when I say public building, does not mean a residence for someone, does not mean a hospitality building of a 5-star hotel, but what I definitely mean is a public building, whether the community centers or the stadiums or theaters, they can be made into an area or play field, so that there are enough facilities such as toilets and other things provided. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So there's a question from Neha, addressed to Mr. Pankaj Dharkar. Her question to Mr. Pankaj Dharkar is that ISHRE has come up with guidelines to enhance HbA1c after COVID-19, where they stated a point that the virus survival decreases progressively at greater temperature, and even said that the pathogens become inactive within 30 minutes at a temperature of 56 degrees. So she's asking that the Indian summers have a temperature of at most 48 degrees. So is there a possibility that the virus might become inactive by the end of summer? Also, various factories and warehouses with furnaces where workers work under really high temperature have less probability to get infected. The same goes for relative humidity to be between 40 to 70%, as most plain areas in India have this humidity level annually. And since coastal areas like Tamil Nadu, Andamans have more than 70%, so are these areas more prone to get infected? Professor Dharkar, please.
Yeah, of course, the data compiled is based on the current information which ISHRE has, and this has been done with a lot of inputs from globally, from ASHRAE, from RIWA, and various engineering societies which are working towards this. We all know that what we are trying to say is also not validated. Nobody has validated things which are currently under research. So only this summer will tell us more accurately what is going to be the real scenario. But we do strongly believe with higher temperature, the spread should come down, and I wish that, because if that doesn't happen, we are in for a big problem. We all know that India could have high temperatures, and even the coastal areas could have high, very challenging weather. So all this will get validated in next 3 to 4 weeks. I think we are not far off, and I will be very lucky that, and all of us for that matter, and India will be very lucky if weather complements. But if we can see the whole world and the way the conditions are happening within the main axis, the casualties are less if you really study the entire world. So I do believe that whatever is going to happen could be good for India if these findings are proven right.
There's a question from architect Khatri. Is there any relevance in thinking multi-story design when we realize that this is not an epidemic, COVID-safe construction format? Would anyone like to take up this?
Can you repeat the question?
In thinking multi-story design.
One of my, please go ahead. I will share my thought. No, my thought is, this COVID safe, I don't think we should start looking at terms like that. We must look at pandemic safe, whether it is coronavirus or anything. Now safety can be achieved by mechanical means or in building design. But that will depend on a whole lot of factors like, costing, material availability, because very high specifications are being set. So we have to be careful when we debate this issue, because it may then boomerang into a large costing. This is my opinion.
We have another question from architect Girish Mistry. When he poses this question, that when present global scenario, people talk about mega scale needs. How can we realize the wish for walkable city being humane, sustainable, and manageable in every crisis? Would any panelists like to take this up?
Yes, I can answer this. Hello?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please go ahead.
It is very important to understand that the nature of the cities that we have been building is unsustainable. There have been so many research studies carried out, and we also know options which are available. Livable cities, walkable cities, green cities are all options. Now, how do we bring about this in reality? So at every level, we need to rethink about the existing policies and existing plans. For example, if we continue with an outdated system of, say, a 20-year plan which was made 10 years back, and we think of continuing with that, it won't be sustainable at all. So we need to look at all these plans and policies from the perspective of making it more sustainable and humane, and suggest the changes. And these changes can begin with local level changes. So can we make our neighborhood more friendly for people who would like to walk, who would be able to cycle down to the place of work, for example? Can we rethink of looking at mixed land use and the kind of zoning bylaws that we have? Can we look at the proportion of green spaces and the built spaces? Can we look at the built form? What is the ground coverage and what is the kind of FAR that we are talking about? All this can be researched and deliberated, discussed at local and city level, and we can begin with some projects to see how this can bring about a change in our overall urban form.
Thank you so much. This is a participant who's asked a question, Himanshu Agarwal. What will be the role of sustainable mobility if we have to evacuate people from any city due to COVID? Any of the panelists? You may even write the answer if you wish to.
Can I answer this?
Yes, please go ahead.
See, we need to have, we have a National Disaster Management Authority, and even at the civic level, we have a whole network of authorities dealing with this issue. In case of any evacuation requirement, we cannot ignore whatever is available to us. So public transportation would be the first option that is available. And in order to ensure that we take safety precautions, it will have to be done at individual level. Whatever technology that we have with us at this moment will have to be applied, and some risk will have to be taken. And then when you receive these people at the other end, whatever precautions are required. But we must have contingency plans. For example, only yesterday we had to evacuate a couple of villages. So we don't have to invent a new thing. I mean, these policies are in place with our authorities. We have to implement them most efficiently and in a manner which cares for human life.
Can I?
This is a very interesting question posed by a student, Nishmita Mitra, where she's asking this question that if we see into history of epidemic, then we find that in 430 BC, plague of Athens happened. It seems like epidemic used to take place even when cities and industrialization were not into play. Then how can we say that lack of ventilation and group housing is the reason of spread of epidemic?
I don't think anyone has said that.
Yes, please.
Interestingly, I don't think that is correct, because if you look at history, whenever epidemics, floods, and any disasters happen, they happen not just because of lack of a particular thing. They happen because a whole series of events took place. Whether it was a tsunami, whether it was closed housing, plague, for example, occurred in London, occurred in so many places because of hygiene. Because so you can't blame a building system for it. But I think today, in today's scenario, it is very important, because we are talking about terms like social distancing, hygiene. So today, I think the built heritage is very critical in tackling a situation like this.
I think there's a question, Architect Sabina, ma'am, there's a question for you from Architect, where he posed this question that as ma'am Sabina just told that the building uses have started changing majorly in hospitality industry. What do you think that is going to affect the sustainability of architecture and also the land use, area, parameters, etc. would appreciate if Architect Puneet and Architect Sabina to add their view, point of view on this. Kindly, both of you be very brief on this. Architect Sabina.
Yes, sorry, I think I had mentioned about the hospitality industry, how it's undergoing change. It's related to that regarding spatial sizes is what the question is about?
Yes, it's about the what is going to affect the sustainability of architecture.
Sustainability of architecture. Well, basically what I was mentioning was that where we have so much of an existing hospitality stock with us, and how is it for those spaces to come back to a ready usage? So they are adapting themselves and making their environments more agile, and how to receive their guests and visitors. So already these use case scenarios are under practice, under test trials, in fact, where the rooms have been modified, you know. So sustainability of architecture within that space, it is that all social distancing and all the new norms that one has to practice now from here on, because I don't think we are ever going to have a COVID-free life. We are going to be living pretty much with the virus till we get the vaccine, you know. And it is for us, our sensibilities and our sensitivities to be in place and to adhere to those norms, you know, and those of social distancing. So that is how the hospitality industry is rising to the occasion to make their product available and make it safe for the end user, so that they feel comfortable when they enter in and revisit those spaces post lockdown. That is where I was coming from, and very effectively, you know, they are adapting and giving it a reusage to the spaces that they already have.
Yeah.
Okay. If I have understood the question that Kapil has asked, sustainability of architecture. Architecture, I think, is one of the oldest professions of the world. Satisfies one of the most important needs for mankind, that is shelter. I don't think so architecture is ever going to be unsustainable. The profession of architecture is going to live and thrive. I don't think so there is any point to worry.
Vivek, I want, before you come to the next question, can I say something?
Yeah, please be brief. Yes.
Yeah. The reason I am saying this is that Professor Akhtar sometime back mentioned that there has been number of recommendations from the institute at various levels, whether for the disaster or after disaster and all these situations. But there has been very little heed by the government to all those things, or sometimes even by the builder or even by individual architects. So I come back to a suggestion which I had made during my presentation. Maybe I was hurrying up because I thought, let me finish within 3.5 minutes and not take 4 minutes. The idea was what I had suggested, because what we had discussed right now is definitely very important. And what we are talking about is the building design or the hospitality or the office space and all these things. What we are discussing is of the people who have lot. They have everything. And what we are discussing. What I had suggested, and I want opinion of all the panelists on this and also the people who have joined us on this conference, that do they agree with the suggestion which I made, that this is the time we had to make it mandatory for a proper shelter for the working people at the site wherever it is required. I want, if there is a recommendation by all the panelists, maybe we can carry back this, and this should be made mandatory. If you want to keep the people at site, I am not talking about the announcement made by the government that sites can start where this provision is available. I am not saying it is compulsory, but I am talking about post-COVID situation when everything has eased out. Do you agree as professionals, and will you take this responsibility on yourself that you will ensure, even if this mandatory requirement doesn't come, you will take care of this, that the people who are working at your site, who are, according to me, partners with you in the building of built environment, should be taken care of, and they should be provided, because today the maximum suffering is by those people. And tomorrow, what is going to happen? The profession of architecture is going to suffer because of that. Some of those expert people whom you had trained or who has trained other workers there will be missing from the urban scene. So what we have been doing is we have not been dealing, and maybe let us take back a lesson from this pandemic that we have to do that. I would say whosoever doesn't agree with me should say, otherwise we should take back this as a recommendation to the government that yes, it can be made mandatory to provide all these facilities. Thank you very much.
Sir, I would like to second your point. And
so many questions we will not be able to take due to paucity of time. I'm going to take the last question of the day from a participant from Spain, Dr. Paez. And this is to the panelists. Anyone can respond very briefly. High technology will be living with us without any doubt in future. His question is, would the architects be able to balance high technology aspects of buildings with passive behavior of architecture in terms of saving energy on a natural way?
I think positively it can be done, because we must now take technology as a tool available and fit it into the passion.
Technology has already been there.
Into architecture. I'm very confident about it.
And architects have been using technology to the best of their advantage. You know, we've seen marvelous buildings coming up, so we'll see even more marvelous buildings coming up. Maybe passive strategies will be integrated in a much better manner, and architects are capable of doing that. I have full faith in the architectural profession.
Absolutely. I think all of those plugins are already in place, and we as architects are very responsibly already adapting, and already adopting those. And definitely,
I think the pandemic is already going to push people towards it.
In response, as we are about to close, Architect Praveen Patel, would you like to make a one-line statement here?
Nothing special. Be positive. Everything will be okay. Thank you.
And any other panelists, just one line? We are towards the end of our panel discussion.
Yeah. I'd like to say.
I would like to focus on the need for research by architects on these critical issues with that demand enhancement of our services. So we must stress research in our practice, in our education, and in our profession.
What I would like to add is, in the apostrophes, go back to context, and life will be all right.
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing. In fact, Puneet has already said it, that we have to connect back with nature. Nature is something which we are missing in our buildings and many of our projects. Of course, the pressures are different, but now with the pandemic, we'll be able to convince our clients that nature is as important as your building itself. That's a message from me.
And I would like Professor Shah to make the statement. I thank all the participants who have come in such an overwhelming response we've got. We were unable to take all the questions, but we made a note of your questions, and I'll ensure that the panelists do respond to your questions on the email that we have from you. We'll definitely respond to them. Thank you so much for joining. I would like Professor Shah to make the closing statement of the webinar. Professor Shah.
Thank you, Vivek ji. I'm audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and I'm really thankful to all the panelists with giving so much of input, and my greatest thanks to my national viewers and international viewers. Just for the information for all, we have architect Farid from ex-architects from Dubai, architect Piaz from Madrid, Spain, and we have architect Malik from London, and my friend architect Birmani from USA as well, and architect Haider Ali, who is also from Sudan. He's joined us here, and he's also one of the advisory member of the Smart Habitat Foundation. Besides that, we have eminent other participants, Professor Mistry, our friend Vijay Garg, Sanjay Goel, Professor Nigandra from Lavi University, Professor Prabjot Kaur, Professor Bahel from Guru Nanak University, Professor Jindal from University, Professor Rani from Anna University, and Professor Shatish from SMR University, and many more my friends who are advisors. This webinar participants are mostly the practicing architects and the teaching faculty, mostly the head of the departments of various colleges. So just to brief now, every week we intend to have webinar, and with my help of my friend Pankaj Dharkar ji, we are collaborating with Smart Habitat Foundation and SOCAM GEMS together, and creating every week, Friday, 5 to 7 on various allied subject of building industry. And the next on the 15th May is reinventing new trends of human settlement in mega cities, wherein we have architect Shamit Manchanda. This is in collaboration with our chapters, Indian Institute of Architects, chapter, Northern chapter, Punjab chapter, and Haryana chapter. We have Shamit Manchanda, we have Puneet Sethi ji, and we have Sanjay Goel. Beside that, we have two international speakers, Dr. Javier Piaz from Spain and architect Farid Ismail from Dubai. And we also have architect Anupam Mittal, who is the chapter chairman of SOCAM GEMS UP. Along with that, we have another international architect, architect Lalita Tharani, who is doing works all over. She's from Bombay. So this is one of the very esteemed panel for 15th of May. Then we have on 22nd May, which is again on redefining smart and sustainable human settlement. And then on 29th, we will be more technical into the air quality, the air syndrome in the post-coronavirus in the capacity building. So in that, we have all technical people, Richie Mittal, Dharkar ji, and many more other people together. And on 15th June, we will be having on fire safety, security, and upkeeping of the capacity building, where this is supported by FSAI, that is Fire Safety Association of India. Then lastly, on 12th of June, which is very interesting, again a webinar is on looking beyond net zero in human settlement, which all of us were actually talking about. That is Ashish Raheja, Richie Mittal, Nilab Nagar from Hafiz Contractors Office, and Professor Rani Maria from Anna University, Gurpreet Shah, Neeraj Arora from James, and my friend Aneet Khanna. So these are some of the frameworks which collectively we are trying to develop. And our strength from Smart Habitat Foundation is how we interact with various other professionals so that it becomes like a holistic architecture and human settlement, so that whatever we do not miss, and we say, yes, we are doing A to Z. So this is what is in future pipelines we look for. And I am really grateful, thankful to all of you, my friend Balbir Verma, Mr. Patel, Mukul, and Mr. Sethi, and our dear exclusive lady, the honorable sweet lady of today's deliberation, Sabina. And I must appreciate, and I love you, Shabina. And it was really great all the times whenever we meet, so inspiring and always looking for a very humane and healthy architecture. And I cannot forget the contribution of my friend Akhtar Chauhan, who has always been a forefront, a scholar, a dynamic personality, which I cannot forget about. And other friend is Mr. Professor Dr. Ramarao, my Punjabi friend, and a Chandigarh guy, and I cannot forget his journey from Madhya Marg to Mysore. And lastly, but not the least, my greatest friend, the adorable friend, is Professor Vivek Sabharwal, who has really made it a great effort. Minded, this webinar has all quality people as participants, and today we had more than 300 professors and all people around. Thank you very much, all of you.